Aunty Judi, thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed today as part of our study. As you know, this project is about the role of history, geography and cultural knowledge in research and in the experiences of being a doctoral or master's candidate. And we're using a kind of life history format, which you'd be familiar with from your own research. So tell me a little bit about, and these are the questions we're going to broadly sort of think about. Tell me about your own personal cultural background.
Right, my name is Judi Wicks. My name is Judi Wicks, and I'm the descendant of the Waka Waka Kalkadoon Nations of Queensland. And I don't know what else.
Yes, okay, So you're a First Nations elder of the Waka Waka people, and other cultural groups as well. Yes.
But I have both Irish and English heritage.
Yes.
Maybe some Scottish there, I'm not really sure.
Yes.
But it wasn't until 25 years ago that I found out that I had Indigenous heritage because of the government and the certificate of exemption. But my grandparents never told me anything about their life of their younger years. So they passed away, not passing on any information, even to their own children, especially my mother.
Yes.
And that was the rules of the exemption, government rules. So they spent their whole life being silent.
Yes.
And it's such a shame because we would have been able to learn so much from their history, but we never got that chance.
Yes.
You know?
So in lots of ways that government exemption, those conditions robbed you of your own family history. Although I know this story for the purposes of the tape, tell me how you discovered that you were Indigenous 25 years ago.
Well, I think I had some understanding that possibly we were, but we were told when we were younger that we were Maori, but I can't see that happening. But when I got into uni to do my honours, I went and saw my non-Indigenous father's sister, and I was talking to her, and she said, "Judi, why are you doing this? You could count as Italian any day." And and she was saying, because why go through all that heartache, and I felt really sad because I'm thinking, why can't I be who I am,
Yes.
And she made a point then of saying, your mother and I have been friends or family for over 60 years and we've never had a cross word.
Yes.
And I thought, is that because my mother kept her mouth shut? Or, saying, nodding and saying yes to everything she said. But another incident happened to me in the 90s where my grandmother's cousin, who we always assumed was her sister, but doing research I found out she was a cousin. And we were at a family christening, and my niece turns 25 next week. It was for her, and I don't know what happened. We're in my mother's house in the kitchen, and she banged her fist on the table, and she said, "I'm not black, I'm white." And I thought, as I got up and walked out, and I was crying, and I said, how could she say that? And then I found out that she got an exemption. And so the government says she was no longer an Aboriginal person. She was non-Aboriginal, and she never sort of got away from that thought, And so the government really stole them as stolen generation, and then stole them again because of their identity.
Yes.
And it's really a hard thing to deal with sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. And I've heard you tell stories before about you finding was it your father's or grandfather's?
My grandfather's
certificate of exemption.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story again, please?
Well, just after he passed away, my mother and I was cleaning out my grandfather, her father's paperwork and or his belongings, and we came across it, the exemption, and I looked at my mum and my mum looked at me, and none of us had an idea of what it was. And so I just thought that maybe that's something I need to look at down the track. And so I asked Mum if I could have a copy of it, and she gave me a copy, and I've been on that journey since then, because I remember going to DAA, I think in those days, they were just opening up the freedom of information.
Yes. Yeah.
And I searched everywhere there, and I couldn't find anything on my grandparents. And I thought, well, why is that so? You know?
Yeah.
And then when I started, I was a stolen generation counsellor, and I was working with clients, and they used to say to me, who are you? Where are you from?
Yes.
And I couldn't answer them.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And so that started me on a journey back to uni and researching. I spent 4 months down at the State Archives, Monday to Friday, looking at all the paperwork down there, government records on exemption. And true enough, I found my grandfather's paperwork, but I never found his exemption. I just saw him in a name, a list of people that gained it that year. And I also saw Nancy, grandma's cousins, in a list, but I never found their exemptions. And I never found any paperwork belonging to Gran and Pop, but there's nearly 100 pages on Aunty.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I understand why she says you always look forward, never look back. And she never told us anything about her life either, her younger years. And we always wondered why, you know. And we have some of the answer now. I'm not saying it's the whole answer, but we're trying to construct what we thought they went through.
Yes. Yeah. So initially you worked in social work, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell me about your experience at school, and then your decision to study social work.
Well, it was a decision over many years. I grew up working like all the young girls in that time, because I was born in 1950, and a lot of us went into either offices or became teachers or nurses. And so I worked in an office and worked there for a few years, and then I got married. In fact, I met an Irishman, and he became sick after I had 2 children, and he became sick, and the doctors couldn't work out what was wrong with him. So we went back to Ireland, and it was there he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I nursed him for 10 years before he passed away. And then by that time I was back in Australia, and then I thought, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And so a friend told me about TAFE, and I did 2 years in welfare. At Kangaroo Point, and I got a job for a year in the medical centre in Hubert Street. And then when I was there was a social worker there, and I thought, maybe I could do social work. And so in fact I got into uni to do psychology. And I found out it was only then, I was in my early 40s, that I had learning difficulties. I just thought I was dumb and stupid. And so I found out I had dyslexia, hyperlexia, auditory processing problems, and I'm short-sighted. And so even with all them, the resilience of always remember what my grandmother said was education was the way. And so I raised 2 children. They both got university degrees, plus myself. And I just went on until I got my degree. I was working full-time, and then I worked part-time, and always making sure that I continued my journey of what I started. Yes. It's important, once you start something, you finish it.
Yes.
And I made the point to make sure you attend classes. You know exactly what the lecturer is asking of you.
Yes.
And put your work in, you know. And then after I graduated as a social worker, I had a job at the Australian Catholic University.
Yes.
I was working over there in Wimala. And then I did some work with a learning disability group. We had to assess students at UQ at St Lucia campus and that word. Gatton, I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah, we're out there and talking about disabilities, and I learned about lifts and the colour of the carpets and all the things that affected visual and where the door handles were located in a door, and all sorts of different things in that group work that I did. Or not that I think it was called TPP Disabilities. It was run by QUT. And then I found out that they were advertising for social workers to work as stolen generation counsellors, and that's when I got into that.
Yes.
And I was with that for a number of years.
And did you at that time know that you were Indigenous by the time you did the stolen generation? So you discovered that by then. But
I still didn't know exactly who I was and where I was from.
Yes.
But over the years, we've sort of got that. But it's still a journey, you know. I say to people, you know, it could be a room of Aboriginal people, and some of them could be my relatives, and I wouldn't even know.
Yes.
Because that's how far and wide the exemption existed. Because when I did my research into it, there was just over 4,000 people got an exemption. And that finished in 1967. The law changed in 65, but it took up to 2 years. The last one was the 13th of March 1967. It was a woman north of Cloncurry who had 2 children. Not a memory, hey? Because that's my son's birthday.
Oh, wow. Yes. Yes.
And so it took 2 years for the government to get the paperwork done. So because it was all about money too, Catherine. It was because the government kept wages, you know, and they gave very little to Aboriginal workers, you know. They put in the welfare fund, but they rarely saw it.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And so that's about it, isn't it? And I just
so you did first of all honours in history,
sociology. It was
sociology.
I was a social science in
social
that
science
when I started here in 2003.
Yes,
and then I did my honours and masters here. Looking at, I did research and I did looking at the exemption through Indigenous studies with Lucinda, and Joanne was my supervisors.
And so I guess your own personal history was very much bound up in your choice of research, which is often very common for a lot of people, really, because it is about your own story, in lots of ways. Doing that research and gradually finding out more about your family, do you know the sort of date at which your grandfather applied for exemption and your auntie, and what kinds of, you know, have you been able to piece together the kinds of conditions that they then had to abide by as part of that exemption?
Yes. So many rules and regulations, you know. I saw a letter when my grandfather first applied in 1918, but he never got his exemption till 1926, 25th of March 1926. But I don't know how many times he could have applied in between that. I never found any paperwork. But by the time 25th of March 1926 had come around. My grandparents were married. They had my mother. She was a toddler, and Grandma was pregnant with her second child.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's why they wanted to get away.
Yes.
Both my grandparents didn't live or raised in an Aboriginal community. They were raised on property. Grandma lived on Boomera Station, north of Cloncurry, and when they sold Boomera Station, they came down to Brisbane and lived at Toowong first, and then moved to New Farm. And her and Nancy was removed in 1920 and put on to Perga Mission. Grandma was sent straight out to work because she was 2 weeks off being 20. When they removed her, and she was sent out to work at Jandowie Station, but it's now a town now. And Nancy she'd already had 2 years at New Farm State School. They sent her out there, and she did 3 years, but she only ended up in grade 4 or something, because they didn't have classes past grade 4. And so when she was 13 and a half, they sent her out to work. They sent her out on a train where she had to pay back the money.
Oh gosh.
And she went out near Taroom Power Station, out that way. And we got so much paperwork, as I said, on her, and then she applied in 1932 for her exemption, and I've got her letter applying for that. And then she got out. But it was horrendous, the things that they wrote about her. The only letter in all those nearly 100 letters was one letter that she wrote asking for exemption. All the other things were government written of how she acted, what they should do with her, and all sorts of things. 19, they pull all her teeth out.
Oh my gosh.
After they cut her, no, the lady she wanted to, she had her teeth taken out, and then she went to live with this woman who wanted to cut her hair because her hair was down here, and she refused. And so she wrote to we had the teeth protector, but she also had a lady protector, and she wrote to her and said, I don't want my hair cut, you know, and they stopped for her then, and the woman that she was assigned to didn't get it cut, but she had bad teeth all her life. She used to problems. But I found out just recently that was the thing that they did to women in the 30s and the 40s. Because my husband's sister, she had her teeth taken out. My dad, who I just spoke about before, her sister had all her teeth out. So it was the thing that they did because they didn't want the women to be an expense on the husband.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why they got all their teeth out. Because I was asking over the genealogy club. I said, some of them in their 80s and 90s there. And I asked them, I said, why would they take their teeth out? And they said it was economics. It was, to pull all their teeth out. But there was a new wave of getting false teeth into the country in the 30s and 40s. And that's why. But I don't know if she had any dental decay or anything, but they just took all her teeth out. You know,
just 19. Such bizarre cruelties, aren't they? And
but it was interesting. Auntie Nancy, she never ever talked about Aboriginal stuff, and yet when she died, I found 156 tea towels that she never used. All sort of relating to Aboriginal pictures or wildlife or whatever. And then under her sink, we found a boomerang that had no markings on it, but it was under the kitchen sink. You know, so there must have been something.
She kept some markers, but very secretly.
And Gran and Pop never ever talked about their past, you know, and as I said before, we could have learned so much from that, but
Yes.
They never did.
Yes. So your history work has been so vital for the family to kind of reconnect with your Waka Waka heritage.
Yes.
And I guess although you can never know all of that you would have known, you've filled in a lot of gaps. In your research.
It was interesting. My grandfather loved horses, and he used to work on property and break horses in and everything, because when he was removed, he was raised by his Irish father and Australian born of Irish parents. And and he used to go up to, I still remember he used to go up to get to Nango quite a bit, and I didn't know he was going up to see his white family or possibly some of his other Aboriginal family, but he never ever told anyone.
He didn't tell you.
You know. And I actually started researching nearly 20 years ago, and I went to Nanango, and I met some of the Irish family of my grandfathers, you know, and I went to the graves and everything, and if only I'd known. But it's interesting, when my grandfather met my first husband, the Irishman, he used to sit for hours with Ken. And I wonder if it's the brogue that he was listening to, because it was his grandmother having the Irish brogue. She was an Irish orphan girl. Remember the ones that came out? And I wonder if that's what it was. You know, it was the brogue that he was missing. That's
it's
really
fascinating.
But no, they were wonderful grandparents, but it's just a shame that they felt that they had to hide all that, because the government rule was that you weren't allowed to associate with other Aboriginal people if they didn't have an exemption. And there was so many rules, you know, you never got it, and that was it. It was with conditions all the time. There's, you know, for 6 months or 12 months, and with wages, without wages, don't buy alcohol. There was so many rules, you know.
And I guess they were watched as well to see if they were complying all the time.
You know, my grandmother, not my grandmother, my mother, she was like us, a hawk on us. We weren't allowed to do anything wrong, you know, because she'd be, and I think, thinking back now, she probably thought if we did anything wrong, we could be round up and put back on the mission. Her parents might have put that fear of God in her, and so she carried it on to us, you know. And when I think about it, you know, mindful, isn't it? You know?
So you had to grow up being a really good girl. Because your mum was watching you, because the system had been watching her family.
Well, she used to say, don't do that, you know, or you know, they're watching, and just say, who's watching? But
Now, I remember you telling me a story. I think it was you, Aunty Judi, that was it your mum used to say, go and talk to those people? Can you tell me that story, please?
Well, when I grew up down in Cleveland, and we used to have people coming up from Stradbroke Island, and I used to go to school with, and if we were uptown and mum saw them at some Aboriginal people on the other side of the road, or you know, and she would never ever go across and meet them. She'd say, Judy, go over and check out, you know, who they are and where they're from. But it was, when I think back, it's so sad now. You know. I can remember going to a few events, or even going to the Manly Hotel with my sister for lunch with mum. An Aboriginal woman would come up to mum and start talking about home and all sorts of things. Mum just stares at them because she has none of that knowledge. And I just think, how sad is that? That she couldn't converse with her own people, you know?
It's really, really sad, isn't it? Because it's the stealing of history, really. The stealing of all your culture and your stories, and language and everything.
The only thing I can remember, and I don't know if it was Grandma that told me or if I got it from somewhere, it was about the woolly wagtail. It was a messenger bird. And and that messenger bird over the years has done well by me, you know. I know when things have happened or about to happen, or I have a view that, you know, I think, where did that come from, you know? I can tell you about two things. That I was down in Victoria, and I've never been to Victoria, and Harvey would go down every year to visit his dad and family down there. And one year we came back via Mount Kosciuszko. And I don't know where we were standing or anything, and I looked across the valley, and it was up the other side, and I said, Harvey, that's an accident waiting to happen. And I don't know why I said that. And a few weeks later, Stuart Diver was the only survivor, and I don't know where I got that sense from, or what it was. And just
so some sort of ancient knowledge,
you know, sort of came into me, and I still don't know to this very day why I said those words, you know. And another time is I did my social work prac in Cairns, and I came back to Brisbane, and I was getting married on the 2nd of January. And I wanted that day, especially because that was my grandparents' wedding anniversary. And in November, I said to my partner then, I said, I don't want to get married then. He says, don't you love me? And I said, I'm not saying this. I don't want to get married that day. And so we went to the people and where we'd organised it, and we changed it till July. And Harvey's sister had a massive heart attack. We spent our wedding day in ICU wondering if she was going to die or not. And how did I know 3 months before? I just don't know. You know, and I think it's that age-old culture that you know tells me, you know, that wasn't a good time, and you just listen to it, you know.
And I suppose as you've got old, I think most of us have intuition, and we often are encouraged to ignore it, but as we get older we go, actually there's a reason for the gut feeling, I should follow it, you know.
And that's what we have to listen to, our wisdom of the past, you know. And that's what I say, you know, I've been involved with this university for 21 years, and I just was part of orientation down at Barunga Centre. And a student that was here a couple of years ago is back, and she was so excited to see me, and that I've missed you so much. And I thought, you know, the impact that our wisdom have, we don't fully understand it, but know that we do pass that wisdom on to the younger ones, you know, and know that you do make a difference, you know, in what we say, and maybe just one word could change a life of a person, you know.
So it's so powerful, education, isn't it?
It is. It is, because a few years ago I was talking to a group of students about studying and having learning difficulties, and then a few months later, over the Innovation Centre, they had a group of students there, and one of the students came up to me and said, are you the lady that talked about having dyslexia? And I said, I guess I am. And she says, I have dyslexia and colour blindness. It's usually males that have colour blindness.
Yes, that's right.
And she said, I never thought I could go to uni until I heard you talk. And she says, I'm going to apply, you know. And so just a few words can change someone's whole life, you know.
Absolutely. So very important. So the discipline that you chose was history, or I suppose sociology. Sociology, although it's related to history, I guess.
Well, I had a history supervisor, and I had a sociologist supervisor. Someone told me you should never marry those two. Somehow, I originally had two sociologists, and then somehow we swapped, but I think I learned from both of them.
Yes,
you know, because history tells the story.
Yes,
and it tells it in facts and figures, where sociologist tells the reason why there's facts and figures, and I think it's sort of good way of marrying both.
Yes,
you know.
Yes.
And
and that would have shaped your research as well.
Yes,
made it richer, I guess, by having both.
Yes. And going out and interviewing people, that was interesting. The only time I ever cried, Catherine, was when I met a group of elders in Brisbane, and I wanted to talk to them about their experience or knew of experiences of exemption, and they just tore into me, absolutely tore into me. I left that room crying my eyes out. And it was over. Why would I want to bring up the past? You know, just leave it in the past, and how dare you, and all those sorts of things. And it was just, and I'm talking 20 something years ago. So research is handled differently today, and I think it was just horrendous what they did to me. You know. But I think, along the lines in research, you have your ups and downs, don't you?
You do,
and you learn by those.
Yes, that's right. And I guess people didn't really know about the exemption much, or I mean, your research has been quite groundbreaking in terms of unlocking those stories, hasn't it? Yes.
Well, known as the Australian expert, and I don't know about that, but someone said the other week the world expert, because no one else has done anything on it. You know, so I suppose in many ways that's an honour, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
And the university gave me an honorary doctorate for it.
Yes.
And when what's her name, read out all the things, she said, first Indigenous scholar or something like that, and I'm thinking, no, I'm the first scholar.
At all.
Full stop.
Full stop. Yes,
you know,
that's right.
And so,
and that work's been so very important, I guess, for so many people who are only like yourself, only discovering recently all of this tragic history and the ways that they've missed out on all of this cultural knowledge.
And it has sparked 2 symposiums. It sparked a book. It sparked a journal, was only being of exemptions stories. So it has sparked so many other things along the way in the last 20 years of doing this. You know, so it's been worthwhile.
And do you have any knowledge from your history work about the part of Waka Waka land that your families are from, or is that still a bit of a mystery?
Well, I know Tabinga Station, because my grandfather's mother was more Tabinga. And in fact, the day I got my honorary doctorate was the day that I should have been in Cherbourg, because we got native title.
That day.
And the same day. And wow, just, you know.
It's incredible.
Unbelievable, you know. So hopefully there's some good things happening. But Pop was removed from Nanango apparently with a group of other Aboriginal people and taken to Devian Creek, but he was only there for 2 weeks, and then it closed down, and then he went to Purga, and that's where he met my grandmother. My grandmother came from Cloncurry, as I said, to Brisbane, and she was removed. She was in a house that was 5. It's been made into 5 flats. Can you imagine how big it is? You know. And as a teenager, I used to go there all the time. Because the owners of Brooma Station bought the house, and they took the auntie and grandma with them as domestics, you know, in the house. And they had another lady, and she fell pregnant, and that's the reason why they took grandma and auntie from there, because on their removal forms it's got for their own protection. And all because the other one got pregnant. But It is what it is. But
Yes.
I'm still friends with that family, you know.
Yes,
so it's
yeah.
rare that you have that continuing relationship.
Yes.
They were good to us.
Yes. Yes.
Not many people can say that about the people that they went to live with or grew up with. And
yes,
so
yes,
interesting.
So you must feel that at the moment is a time of hope, I suppose, with the native title decision and all of that. What sort of advice would you give young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples now? I know you work with a lot of young people in the Barunga Centre. What kind of advice do you give them about their cultural identity and about finding things out?
Well, I've had a couple of students over the years coming looking for family, so I'm still sort of doing that work. In fact, I was talking to someone recently and she said to me, even though you helped me find my family, and that's really excellent, you know, we're in contact, we're doing all the things, but the most important thing you did for me was you told me to stand in front of the bathroom mirror every morning and saying, I am a beautiful Aboriginal woman. And she says, I still do that. And that's what changed my life.
Wow.
And I thought, just those few little words, I'm a powerful, beautiful woman, you know, Aboriginal woman, you know, because she was not sure of her own culture, her own background, but since she was able to find family, she is embracing all that. But to just be who she really is and understand who she is, you know, and know who she is. It's so important, you know, because if you're not you, who are you?
Who are you?
So be honest with yourself. And if you don't know, find out.
So you do a lot of family history work with Aboriginal people and others about, you know, finding out who they are. And that must be really rewarding work.
It is. It is to know that you help someone find their family, you know, even though I'm still looking, you know. It's just nice to know that you've done something to help that connection, you know. I think I've done 3 this year.
Have you? Wow. And I imagine there's quite a demand for that kind of work. And it has to be done so sensitively as well.
It is. I belong to the genealogy club over at Nambour, and we actually had a session 2 years ago over there, maybe 3 years ago, where we got people that wanted to come and check out their white side because we can't do the Indigenous side. But we had a few that was so over the moon because they found some members of their non-Indigenous family, you know, which was really good, you know. One of them, he was dancing around. He was so happy. Because he was, it was an American Connection or something, and he was so over the moon about it, you know, because they always knew something, but they didn't know the full story, you know. And so it's really interesting. And as I say, when you're looking for family, go back to where you think they were and go and see the old people, because the old people, no matter how many times someone changes their name, they don't change their face or their features. And I remember, you know, years ago when I was looking for my father's side and in New South Wales, and we used to go to the information centres because they're manned by seniors. And they were able to tell us amazing things, you know, like we went to the Dubbo Cemetery and they were able to point this and this out, and we found it so easily and able to tell about the family history and everything, you know.
So find the older people in the community and you'll find the stories. And what advice would you give to non-Indigenous people who think that this history is really important as well.
Embrace it. It's our history. It's not just Indigenous history. Since colonisation, it's our history.
Yes.
And we have to embrace the two. We have to take in what's happened before.
Yes.
And we have to take in what's going to happen in the future.
Yes.
You know, and of course what's happening at the present.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
We can't have a future without a past.
Yes. Yes.
And embrace it, because it is what it is.
Yes.
It's our history.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think they're the main questions I had. Did you have any other comments you wanted to make at this point?
No, as a student, just enjoy the journey and be there in it, you know?
Yes.
Don't haphazardly go into subjects and uni because you think you may want to do it or whatever. Go in there with passion and do the best that you can, you know?
Yeah.
Because in the end, you'll get that piece of paper, and it's a piece of paper will get you a passport to your life in the future, your home, your studies, your work, your finances. If you want to go overseas, you know, in this day and age, in working, you have to have that piece of paper. It was different 50 years ago, but not today. You've got to have. If you want anything worthwhile, you know, and then be able to bring up your children the same way, you know. My dad was illiterate, and I didn't know till many years later. And in fact, I only found out a few years ago when I was on a caravan trip. I think I told you about the wheelbarrow.
Yes. So tell that story on the tape.
My dad was illiterate, and even though he wanted to be there for all his 7 children in reading and that at home and schoolwork, and he used to say, let's play a game for all the words we don't know. Let's call it wheelbarrow. and I didn't know where he got that word wheelbarrow from. And we got to the point where Dad, nearly every word's wheelbarrow. I think we need to change this. And I was on a camp a few years ago, and one of the fellow campers, he was having some problems with his wheelbarrow, or with something in the caravan, and he said, "Bloody wheelbarrow!" and I said, "What did you say?" And I said. He said wheelbarrow, and I said, "Where'd you get that from?" He said, "We're in the army, and if you didn't know anyone's name, you used to call them wheelbarrow." And simple as that. So my dad was in the army, the Second World War, and he picked that up, and I thought, what a good learning tool, you know. He had the sense to, you know, it's about resilience, isn't it? You know, to come back. My grandmother wasn't allowed to go to school on the farms, and they used to have school for the non-Indigenous kids, and her job in the afternoon was to clean the board. And so she used to rub out with this hand and write with the left hand. And then she'd go to the pantry and get the jam tins and got the kids to teach her how to say those words. And so she was resilient in wanting to be able to read and write. And I thought, and she, you know, good on her.
Herself,
she taught herself. And then her son, my uncle, was a boxer. And in 1949, he brought her a Webster dictionary. You know, those really big ones.
Chunky ones.
And I still have that dictionary. Because every time I went to their house, that was the first thing I'd go, and I'd sit for hours just looking at that dictionary. You know, and so she was able to enter competitions where she won £2 or £4 or £1, and that would supplement the weekly budget. You know, I thought the resilience of her, you know, it's just quite amazing.
Incredible. So inspiring. So I think now what we might do is, on tape, would you like to tell us about your time map and explain the images that you've chosen?
Well, my time map is called My Journey, and I've got 2 sets of arrows going forwards or going from left to right. And my auntie would say to me, Judi, always go forward, never go back, you know. You always look for the future. And I thought that's very relevant, you know. I grew up in a family of 4 girls and 3 boys and parents, and my mother's aunts and uncles and were always around us, much more than my father's white family. We was more the Indigenous family. And we always got together and had fun and did all the usual things we used to do in the 50s and 60s. And later on I got married, and my husband and I, we had 2 children. And then later on I got into university, and I got 2 pictures of houses, but they're really equals to the University of Queensland and the University of the Sunshine Coast. And I've got a picture with lines in it, and that's really about doing assignments and writing. And through all that, I have a wonderful partner that has been able to help me through it all. And my area of research was exemption, so it was government archives that I had to go and deal with and look at all the files and all the horrible things that those workers put in. It was interesting, Catherine, because what was written in the main story of letters was important, but what was written on the sides was more important. Because they really told the story of what I can remember in one file I was looking through, someone had written on the side, this person has enough money to buy a house outright, and that man never got that money, you know. It was just horrendous. And this is lines, the lines are sort of just flowing. I flow along, you know.
And your journey, and I guess your journey is still
going. Yes. So I was born in Brisbane, and I've lived in southeast part of Queensland for most of my life. Lived in Dalby. I grew up around the scenic rim, and my dad was a farmer, and we used to milk the cows and everything. And then I spent 3 years in Ireland. I've travelled around the world a lot. In the last 20 years or so, being involved with conferences and talks and everything. I spent a week in New Zealand in 2000.
I hope that's worked. It's the lights have gone off again. So
I spent a week in New Zealand at the host of the New Zealand Social Work Association. And that was pretty amazing, because they had me up at 5:30 in the morning being interviewed. They had me in papers, they had me on television. And I was doing workshops, I was doing lectures for them, and it was just an amazing experience, you know. And they gave me a Maori welcome. We went to the mental health place and had that. But I've spoken in New Zealand, Taiwan, Japan, Finland, Scotland, Chicago, Montreal. I think that's about it.
Wow.
and all around Australia. So I think what Grandma said, education is the way, because you've got to educate other people about what's important in your life, and you know, and finding out that Pop was no longer, or Grandma was no longer classed as Aboriginal people. I think, how cruel a government, you know, that they allowed that to happen. And a lot of people don't know that 1897 Act was actually picked up by South Africa, and it's part of the apartheid, you know. And so there's been some Christian people that have done unchristian things.
Terrible things.
Terrible things. And what else?
I think that's everything. So I might turn the recording off now. We can always talk more